Okay. Chapter 29. The final chapter. Knock, knock. Elliot and Josie, Josie and the Immortals partied with willful abandon all night, pushing all the thoughts of the next day as far from their minds as they could. But as Friday dawned, so too did the reality that this was their last day at home farm. The harpy-faced hag, huffed Aphrodite through her glasses. Why, I've got a good mind to scratch her evil eyes out. Temper will get you nowhere, said Athene, reading through the paperwork for the millionth time. But this is watertight. She has legally bought the farm. Perhaps I should go and negotiate with her, said Hephaestus, sharpening his axe. We can't break mortal laws, said Zeus, however unfair they are. Why can't Elliot just buy it back? Said Hermes, beneath his eye mask. He only needs 20 quid. With the Earthstone, he could buy King Crocus a condo. It's no good unless this bally horsey bum wants to sell it now, said Zeus. Chances of that are slim as a supermodel sandwich, sighed Hermes. There must be something we can do. Maybe she'll have a change of heart, said Zeus, putting his arm around Elliot's dejected shoulders. After all, the only person who can stop this sale now is Patricia herself. Bosh! Yelled Hermes as he shot blindly up in the air like a rocket, hitting his head on the ceiling. That's it. It is, said Zeus, not at all sure what was what. Where are you going? Athene yelled after the flying messenger, as the discarded eye mask hit her in the face. No time, babe, shouted Hermes, pulling on the invisibility helmet as he flew out the gate. Hold tight. It's only a house, Ellie, said Aphrodite as the clock ticked towards midday. The midday deadline for Patricia's purchase. We'll help you find a new one. I don't... What's happening? Where are my things? Said an agitated Josie, trying to unpack one of the dozens of boxes that filled the farmhouse. It's our home, said Elliot, holding Josie's hand as he switched on the television to distract her. It's the only place Mum knows, the only place that's familiar to her. We have nowhere else. The gods looked helplessly at each other as Elliot tightened his grip on his mother's hand and whispered reassurances in her ear. At 11:55 a.m., Patricia Porcely Plum tottered into the farm, still smarting from the smack on the bum that the open gate administered her on the way in. Hello, cutie pie. Cutie pudding, shrieked Patricia, barging away into the house. Can no one shut a ruddy gate? Huffed Hephaestus, heading out to his fence. It's not midday, said Elliot angrily, looking at the grandfather clock. It's not yours yet. Details, details, my Pookie. Well, 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 isn't this quite the party? Said Patricia, eyeing up the fuming immortals. How nice to see you all again. Can't say the same, said Aphrodite tartly. Oh, that's lovely, dear, just lovely, said Patricia absently, looking around the house she couldn't wait to tear down. It's so important to make lovely memories, and this will be a lovely memory of your last day at Home Farm. In fact, Home Farm's last day too. The bulldozers are outside the fence. I can't... What? Started Josie again, as Aphrodite put a comforting hand on her shoulder. Please, said Elliot frantically to the gods, do something, anything. We can't break mortal laws, said Zeus sadly. We can break their snotty noses, though, said Aphrodite, with her beautiful face screwed up in hatred, as she made for Patricia on the other side of the room. Athene held her back. Aphrodite, let me handle this, Athene said, calmly approaching Patricia. Mrs. Porcely Plum, without question, you are the most miserable, twisted, odious Gordon fart, she screamed. I should take this contract and... Zeus quickly clamped his hands over Elliot's ears to spare the boy from the torrent of filth that spewed out of Athene's mouth. But from the hand gestures alone, Elliot could gather that whatever Athene was suggesting was going to be extremely energetic, very uncomfortable, and Mrs. Porcely Plum was going to be doing it for a rather long time. Until it drops off, a puffed red-faced Athene, taking her first breath for over a minute. Charming, my dear, said Patricia, unmoved. But in 3 minutes, I will own this farm, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're a monster, boomed Zeus. You're a witch, hissed Aphrodite. You're on the telly, said Josie, as Patricia's pointy nose appeared on the screen. What the devil? Huffed Patricia, as Athene turned up the volume on a local news report. And finally, a lovely Christmas miracle to roast your chestnuts as we cross live to Little Mockbury for a special announcement from local businesswoman Patricia Porsley Plum, said the newsreader as the screen switched to outside Patricia's house. Wait, that's not me, cried Patricia as her identical twin started to speak. This special time of year has caused me to reconsider my selfish and greedy ways. The on-screen Patricia started. I realise that by slavishly pursuing my own wealth, I've hurt this community, not to mention my roots. This hair dye is pants. Are those wings on your shoes? Smiled Aphrodite, squinting at Patricia's high-definition feet. But, stammered the Patricia in the room, regretting the second sherry she'd had her butler pour at breakfast. And so I've decided to give it back to my community, from which I've taken so much. TV Patricia continued. I've donated all of my vast wealth to charity. No! Screamed Patricia as her mobile phone started to ring. And furthermore, TV Patricia continued, striking a pose for the cameras, I'd like to open up my house to the poorest members of society, to become a hostel for those in need of shelter and a place to get back to their feet. What do you want? She screamed down her mobile phone as the grandfather clock struck midday. Bankrupt? No, that's not possible. Of course there are sufficient funds in my account. It's only £20. What do you mean I forfeit the sale? I can't lose Home Farm. I want it. Elliot looked more closely at the picture on the TV. Patricia's shoes definitely did have tiny wings on the side, and there are a couple tucked into her perm as well. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to apologise to those I've wronged, said Hermes, disguised as Patricia. Never again will I be the avaricious idiot I've been my whole life. And I will definitely get my colours done. These autumn shades make my skin look flatter than a grated espadrille. Now, please come and enjoy my wine cellar. The first 10 inside get a free bottle of Chateau Lafite. Boom! No, not the Chateau Lafite, screamed Patricia, running for the door as Athene joyfully ripped up the paperwork for the house sale. Stop! All you disgusting poor people. Get your impoverished fingers off my lovely thing. Stop! Wait a minute, shouted Elliot. You forgot something. He rummaged around in his pocket and pulled out a £20 note. Here, he said. Now we're even. Oh! Patricia raced out the door and immediately tripped on the path, leaving one of her shoes stuck in the paving stones. Allow me to help you, said Hephaestus, dragging her towards the fence. Get your filthy hands off me, roared Patricia, kicking the gate with the remaining shoe. Get me out of here. Suit yourself, said Hephaestus, lumbering towards a large lever by the fence. Cheerio! As the immortal blacksmith yanked on the lever, Mrs. Horse's bum was catapulted high into the air with a shriek, her petticoats flapping in the breeze. Straight over the fence, past the retreating bulldozers, and as far away as the eye could see. Christmas Day was a celebration like none Elliot had known. By late afternoon, Elliot and the mortals were flopping around, creaking dining table, piled with enough food to feed the continent. I'm stuffed, seriously, groaned Hermes, downing his fourth piece of Yule log. Elliot happily tucked into his third bowl of Christmas pudding, fighting off Virgo for the last of the brandy butter. Who wants to pull another cracker? Said Aphrodite to a chorus of groans from the group. Who were tired of being squirted with water or having a custard pie thrown at them from her trick crackers. Spoil sport, she pouted, pulling one by herself and being showered in red rose-scented pink glitter. Elliot looked over at Mum, who was happily chatting to Athene. Elliot's mind flashed back to the previous Christmas, when Grandad had been so ill he couldn't make it downstairs for Christmas dinner, so he and Mum had sat around his bed with their tiny portions of cold turkey. He wished his grandparents were here to see the cheer around the table, but he knew they'd be happy just to know that he and Mum were safe and being so well looked after. Prezi time! Boom! Shouted Hermes, flying over the giant Christmas tree, which was not only surrounded by mountains of presents, but also topped with a real fairy. Hello! Yelled the fairy down her mobile phone. I can't talk, I'm on the top of a Christmas tree. Hermes sifted through the gifts, flying them around the room until everyone had a pile at least as tall as themselves. Elliot set to work on his particularly huge stack. Athene had given him an encyclopedia that contained every single subject known to man, plus a few that weren't, and projected moving holograms of each entry. Aphrodite immediately looked up at the rudest things she could think of. From the goddess of love herself, Elliot received a box of mischievous potions, for everything from growing excess body hair to making someone speak backwards, as well as the confiscated wishing pearl she had hidden in the bottom of the box, winking as Elliot slipped it into his pocket. The gifts went on and on. His own bottomless satchel from Hermes, a pen from Zeus that threw thunderbolts with the click of the lid, and his own copy of What's What from Virgo. But his favourite gift came from Hephaestus, who had quietly dropped a knotted handkerchief in Elliot's lap on his way out. "Abby Christmas," the blacksmith mumbled as he left the busy farmhouse for the peace and quiet of his forge. Elliot unknotted the handkerchief. Inside was his father's watch, restored to perfect working order, and complete with a set of pencil-scrawled notes on the improvements Hephaestus had made. Elliot wasn't sure he'd ever need his watch to unlock a combination safe or trigger an explosion, but was truly touched by Hephaestus' gesture. Virgo leant over and stole a piece of cake from Elliot's plate. "Oi, that's mine," objected Elliot. "Your rules," said Virgo, swallowing it whole. "Not mine." "Do you have a minute, Elliot?" "A minute, Elliot?" asked Zeus. "I think I need to walk off that fourth plate of turkey." Elliot and Zeus walked up into the fields, which were still thriving with Demeter's exotic fruit and vegetables. It was slightly odd seeing giant pineapple trees covered in a thin layer of snow, but they appeared to be in rude health in the icy field. "How are you, dear boy?" Zeus asked Elliot. "Really?" "I'm fine," said Elliot honestly. "Everything's fine now." "You're a hero," said Zeus. "I don't know many mortals, or immortals, who could have resisted Thanatos like that. You're an exceptional young man, Elliot Hooper." "I haven't stopped him though, have I?" said Elliot, voicing the doubt that had been nagging at him since his return from the underworld. "No," said Zeus softly. "Unfortunately, Thanatos still had his allies. It won't be long before someone comes to his aid. Indeed, I suspect they already have. But don't underestimate what you did. If you hadn't, Thanatos would have taken the Earthstone, and I dread to think what could have happened." "Sorry I stole it," said Elliot, desperate to unburden himself from the guilt that had been dragging around for weeks. "I didn't think I had any choice." "But you did make a choice. The right one," smiled Zeus, producing the Earthstone from his pocket. "I never thought I'd see this again." "What are you going to do with it?" asked Elliot. "I was going to ask you the same thing," said Zeus, as he came to a halt, his blue eyes meeting Elliot's. "What do you mean?" said Elliot, as Zeus placed the Earthstone in his palm. "What are you—" "Thanatos can't touch you," said Zeus, wrapping Elliot's finger around the glowing stone. "You're the only person who can keep it from him." "Are you sure?" Elliot asked. Thanatos' oath in the cave swirled around his mind. The Chaos Stones in return for his mum. Could Zeus really trust Elliot? Could Elliot really trust himself? "Guarding the stones won't be easy," said Zeus. "They're a heavy burden to bear, one that I couldn't face." Elliot remembered how powerful he felt when he used the Earthstone. He could get used to that feeling. Too used to it, perhaps. They corrupted powerful demons like Ibrus and Thanatos. You'll need every ounce of goodness in your heart to make sure they don't consume you. "So you're saying I could end up like Gollum?" gasped Elliot. "What? Running your own successful chain of high street jewelers?" said Zeus. "No, I meant you'd go mad." "Right," said Elliot, holding his Earthstones up to the light and casting rainbows all around. "This is serious, Elliot," said Zeus in a harsher tone than Elliot had heard him use before. "The stone will do its very best to conquer you. Don't let it. Only ever use its powers if your life depends on it. Every time you use the stone, it will tighten its hold over you. Be wise, Elliot, and be careful." It was good advice. Elliot pushed Thanatos' oath to the back of his mind. It was better left there. "Where shall I keep it?" asked Elliot, feeling a large diamond was probably against Boyle's jewellery rules. "Hephaestus thought of that," said Zeus. "Such a clever chap. Open your watch." Elliot opened it and saw the lid had been divided into 4 equal parts. "There you go," said Zeus. Elliot had the Earthstone to the watch, wondering how it was going to fit, but at least 10 times larger than the space allowed for it. But, as if hearing his thoughts, as soon as the diamond touched the watch, it shrank into its place, gleaming brightly as it filled the perfect quarter of the lid. "We've still got 3 more stones to find," said Elliot, tucking the watch back into his inside pocket. "Yes, we do," said Zeus. "And after Christmas, we'll start looking for the next one. And then the one after that. We'll beat Thanatos in the end, don't you worry." Elliot said nothing, but desperately wanted to share Zeus's optimism. We'd better get back," said Zeus. "Your mother wants to watch the Queen's speech, and so do I. She's a fine-looking lady, that monarch of yours." "Be careful," said Elliot. "She can ninja kick you into the middle of next week." Zeus chortled happily as they set off back to the farm, where everyone had gathered around the telly and on the plush armchairs. Virgo signalled to Elliot to come and sit by her. "Listen," she said nervously, "there's something I've been meaning to say to you. Something important." Elliot shuddered and gritted his teeth. Christmas brought out the mushy in people, and girls were the worst. He waited to hear Virgo's heartfelt declaration of love and wondered how he was going to let her down gently. She punched him in his right arm, hard. You're such a Gorgon fart, she said. Shut up, said Elliot. You shut up, said Virgo, the two of them jostling on the sofa, neither seeing the smile on other's face. Shh, it's starting, said Josie as the Queen took to the screen. Elliot listened to Her Majesty's good wishes for the following year with mixed feelings. On the one hand, he had no idea what it would bring. The gods were a huge help. Mum's health wasn't getting any better. Thanatos wouldn't be happy until the Chaos Stones were his, and Elliot was dead at his feet. The gods could only protect him so far, and Elliot knew that he was going to have to keep his wits about him if he wanted to be here next Christmas. But for the first time in a long time, Elliot felt traces of hope. He had spent so much of his life facing an uncertain future that he knew he could handle it. And now that he had something he'd never had before, whatever life had in store, whatever the future held, Elliot Hooper knew that he would face it with his friends. A knock at the door reverberated through the house. Whoever could that be? Said Zeus. Did someone forget to shut the gate again? I'd better go. Hauling his bulk off the sofa, he padded out of the room to the front door. The others listened intently. Poised for action as he unlocked the door and pulled the creaking door open. What are you? He started before the visitor on the other side of the door stunned him into silence. This cannot be, he yelped in terror from the hallway. The other gobs leapt to their feet. How in the heavens did you find me here? Screamed Zeus. Schnortle snort. The end. For now. Okay, so we're left on an absolute cliffhanger. And that is the end of this book. There are some more books in the series. Okay, I know a couple of you have read some of them already. And I'll see if I can find a link that if you wanted to listen to those yourself, you could. Okay, have a lovely weekend, everyone.